Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 31 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, a book summarizing world mythologies from...
Around the world.
There we go, you finished it that time. This time we're covering Freyja and other stories.
I feel like I was just here.
Yeah, it's strange.
Last week's episode. I feel like I haven't even moved.
Yeah, we're time travelers, one would say incorrectly. But yes.
Boop, beep, here I am.
Thanks for the sound effects, I guess. Is that what time travel sounds like? Boop, beep, and that's it.
Yeah, just snap your fingers. Boop, beep. A week later.
Yes, exactly. But as I was saying...
I can only travel in time in one direction.
We all travel in time in one direction,
Yeah,
actually.
but I do it in leaps.
You don't. We're in the same time. We went over this last time. We were just talking about this.
I just leapt through time.
You did not. But as I was saying, this time we are covering Freyja and other stories. This is a collection of shorter tales from Norse mythology, little interesting snippets of stories and other tales, that sort of thing.
Freyja.
Yup. Thanks for sharing. We are talking about Freyja.
Yeah.
Yes, the first story is, as you might expect, about Freyja. And Freyja was the goddess of beauty and love, and she lived in the hall Sushrymnir in the realm of Volkvang.
Now you have to remind me, how is Freyja related to everybody again?
So we'll actually talk about this in the next story. She's the daughter of Njord, who is one of the Vanir. So there were two separate families of gods, the Vanir and the Aesir, and they had a big war. And at the end of the war, they exchanged hostages, and Njord and his family came to live in Asgard with all the Aesir. So she's not really directly related to many of the other gods.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Our listener was wondering.
Yes, our singular listener. And so, not listener, Freyja, just exchanging nouns there. Freyja would often lead the Valkyries into battle as Valfreyja. The slain heroes were taken to Folkvang, and their wives would often take their own lives to join their husbands in the splendor of Freyja's lands.
Are there any other female warriors in world mythology?
I'm sure there are. I mean, you have the Amazons in Greek mythology. That comes to mind pretty quickly. But I mean, there's bands of female warriors, I think. But yes. Yes, you're quite right. Freyja was therefore a symbol of love, courtship, and the earth, and she married Odur, a symbol of the sun. And they had two daughters, Hnoss and Gersemi, which Hnoss is a great name. You should
name you Hnoss?
Yeah, that's a woman's name, apparently. Hnoss.
Well, if you ever have a dog.
Yeah, a dog. Yeah, Hnoss. Yes.
H-N-O-S-S.
Yes.
Why do you like that name?
No, it's a terrible name. Yes,
I
I was being sarcastic.
Oh,
yes.
You seemed really excited about it.
No, that was sarcasm.
Do you think Hnoss is worse than Gersemi?
Gersemi? I mean, I think the Hn is not a very pleasant sound to start off with. Hnoss. Yeah. Anyway.
Do you find that you think a name is ugly because you knew somebody that was ugly that had the name, and vice versa? Do you think of that?
I haven't thought about it too much, no.
Well, if you ever get married and have kids, and you start going through trying to figure out a name for the kid, you start associating. You really will instantly associate names with a person or people. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I didn't know any Adams.
No, that's good, I guess.
Yeah. Other than the Adam from the Bible.
Yes.
But I mean, there's not a whole lot of Adams.
I guess so.
And when we named you, and because we played the negative word association game, where your mom would be like, "I would really like the name of such and such," and I would say the name of some celebrity or murderer or somebody that had that name.
Of course you would.
And she's like, "Oh." And so that was fun for me.
Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. And so we ended up with 4 Bible names.
Yes, we did.
Old Testament Bible names.
We did. Yeah. Back to the story. Like I said, yes, I interrupted myself that time. This is a rare occurrence of me interrupting the story. But yeah, as I was saying, Freyja did marry Odur, but however, Odur grew tired of Freyja's song, and so he left his family to travel the world. And Freyja fell into a great despair, crying tears that became golden nuggets as they embedded into the ground.
Now, it doesn't say that he went out and cheated on her.
No, he just kind of went out into the world.
Bored and he went on a trip.
Yeah.
Which
it did say he had wandering eyes.
he did, but it didn't say that he acted on it.
Yeah,
It's kind of implied.
It kind of, I guess, kind of implied, but really, he just kind of goes around the world.
Right.
Without Odor, Freyja cannot bring love and affection, and so she set out to find him in secret, taking the names Syr, Skrif, Thrir, excuse me,
It was the fourth
and
one.
Horn, yes. And she eventually found Odor in the south, where the summer still clung. They were united by a flowing stream under a myrtle tree, and Odor remembered the love he had for Freyja, walking back to Asgard together with flowers blooming in their path. And the loveliest of these flowers were named Freyja's hair and Freyja's eye-dew, and brides still wear myrtle in their hair as a symbol of love and good fortune. I guess that's kind of a sweet story if you ignore the fact that he just kind of left his family, but sweet enough, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I'm going to operate on the assumption that he wasn't cheating on her, and he just kind of needed some time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it is kind of a sweet story because she tracks him down. She was so sad without him, and then they reunite. And he realizes, yeah, I was wrong, and this gal is great.
Yes.
That it reminds me of the movie City Slickers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
You ever seen the movie City
I have never
Slickers?
seen the movie City Slickers.
City Slickers with Billy Crystal.
Huh.
We'll have to watch it.
Okay. City Slickers. Just wanted to say it one more time because we said it like three times in a row there.
Can I tell you the ending, though?
Sure, I'll probably forget by the time if we ever watch it.
We will watch it. So Billy Crystal is kind of in a rundown, middle of life deal, but he's got a wife and a family, and they're happy, but he's just like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of his buddies says, "Hey, I got a trip to go out and wrangle horses or be cowboys for like a week or something."
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want to go, and she said, "You have to go."
Yeah.
And because she's miserable because he's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, something along the lines of, "You have to get your smile back because you're just miserable, and I don't want you here, basically, because of the way you are." And he goes, and of course, he gets his smile back at the end.
Oh, very nice.
Jack Palance is a co-star in it as the tough,
I don't know that name.
famous movie star, a lot of westerns, tough guy. Jack Palance, good actor.
Oh. I also realized I mispronounced like all of the additional names of Freyja, so I should go back and read those. Those were Syr, Skjalf, Thrung, and Horn. I got Horn correct, but I think I couldn't read my own handwriting there. But yes, so some good made-up names there. But yeah, I guess it is.
I think City Slickers is like this story.
You think it was inspired by the story of Freyja?
No, I think it's just the same story. I think they came up to it independently. It's like
that's what we said like a couple episodes ago. That the common like story themes that exist in mythologies and still exist today. Yeah.
And so he went out, and although it doesn't say he did anything, he just went out to the beach and hung out on the beach until his wife tracked him down. He's like, she ain't so bad after all. She is kind of pretty. And then they go back, and there's flowers everywhere.
Yes. What do you think this is an explanation for? I feel like this is an explanation for something. And at first I thought it was like an explanation of the seasons, but we kind of get that story in the next story that we're about to read here. But what do you think? Because it feels like this is some sort of like natural occurrence explanation story.
I mean, I was thinking that same thing too when I was reading it. Something along the lines of not a drought, but like a really long winter. Mm-hmm. That to explain that 1 year they only had like 2 weeks of warm weather or something. And well, it's because he got bored and went south where it's always sunny. Yeah. And she had to go get him. Yeah. And then bring him back, and then we finally get summer.
It also mentions in here that Odor is like also a symbol of like ardor and affection. So he's like the more powerful aspects of love, I guess, or the more direct. Yeah. So I was kind of thinking like it'd probably be used as an explanation for like why people do fall out of love. Well, it's because Freyja and Odor aren't together, so they can't bring you their affection and their love and their grace and that sort of thing.
No, I think it's a pretty common thing. Well, I'll give you some life advice. Like, so when you get married,
oh boy.
It's let me make sure I'm careful how I say it, but like when you're young and you're in love, there's passion, and when you're married, over the years, there'll be periods of time where you're very passionate, and there are other times where you're less passionate. Let's put it that way, and sometimes you're just like, God, I just need some space. Yeah. But especially if you both have kind of get stuck in a rut, like a routine in your daily life. Then if the other person doesn't challenge you or surprise you, it can become a real drag, and you can get kind of like if you have this low ebb, and that's why I'm choosing to believe that he didn't go cheat on her, but just needed some space to you almost have to like recharge your batteries and recharge that relationship from time to time. And so I think it's a neat story because it kind of explains that that feeling that like they described it like the song became stale or something. It was something along those lines. The song that she would sing became stale, I think. Somewhere. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting concept of how a marriage or a long-term relationship does kind of wax and wane over time, and you just gotta be steady with it.
I guess it's kind of what I was saying. I guess not necessarily like falling out of love, but like the different like flow of emotions. What you were saying. Yes.
Yeah. Because out of love is a whole different thing, you know. Because you still be in love with somebody and temporarily be like,
and like need some space. Yeah.
Stop with it. Go. Stop saying those same jokes. Wait, no, it's a little too close to home. Yes.
The next story is the story of Njord. When the war between the Aesir and the Vanir ended, Njord and his children Freyja and Frey came to live in Asgard. Njord was made the ruler of the winds and the sea near the shore, dwelling in Noatun, where he protected Asgard from Aegir, the fiery god of the sea. Njord was the embodiment of summer, and every spring he stilled the winds and moved the clouds to let the sun's rays touch the earth. He had been married to Mother Earth, Nerthus, but he was forced to leave her behind when he came to Asgard. But all was well until Skadi had arrived, for she was the giantess who had chosen Njord as her husband by his clear feet. This is what we were talking about, I think, 2 episodes ago, where she was the giantess who had to have payment for the death of her father. Skadi was now goddess of winter, but when she moved in at Noatun, she could not sleep due to the sounds of the waves, and so she ordered Njord to return with her to Thrymheim, which deeply saddened him, for he loved the ocean. However, Njord was kept awake in Thrymheim due to the sounds of waterfalls, falling ice, and wolves, and so an agreement was made between them that Njord would live in the Kingdom of Winter for 9 months of the year, and the other 3 in Noatun, where he would bring back summer. This arrangement worked for several years, but at last Njord and Skadi parted ways. Skadi became the finest marksman, marrying the historical Odin, giving him a son Saming, and then eventually marrying Ullr, the god of winter, a much better fit for the icy goddess. I think one of the biggest things to notice here is that winter is 9 months and summer is 3, which is the opposite of the very similar story in Greek mythology with Persephone and Hades, where she goes down for 3 months into the underworld and is 9 months of nice weather. So yeah, very, very characteristic of the Scandinavian regions. Yeah,
yeah, the climate down in the Mediterranean, you got 3, cold months, and you have the other months that you actually have crops and everything. And I was thinking the same thing.
Exactly.
Up north, you have 9 cold months.
It's also interesting here that we get a mention of the historical Odin. This is another thing that I haven't mentioned before, but there are like historical figures that claim to be the gods themselves, and you can actually trace their lineage. They claim to be like kings of Norway and that sort of thing. And so they would claim, I married this goddess or this giantess, or I'm descended from Odin and this sort of thing. It's a claim to power, but we can't trace like those family lineages here. Like, for example, with Saming here being an actual descendant of a dude named Odin who was a king at one point. Of course, he did not actually marry the giantess named Skadi.
Why not?
Well, I don't think she exists. Oh, it says so here. I don't know if this is 100% accurate physical knowledge, but unfortunately. But yeah, that's an interesting concept. It pops up in a lot of other regions, but not really as directly or as noticeably, I think, in Norse mythology. Like, it definitely happens where you had rulers like claim to be, this a descendant of this figure, but they're not usually like incorporated into the myths themselves. And that's something that you see in Norse mythology, where it's like, well, we believe this guy, let's incorporate him into the myths themselves. And so you see this lineage here.
Well, you had like Eastern European kings claiming to be like the descendants of Constantine, and some of them, I think, even like descendants of David. Yeah, like the tribes of David
of Israel,
Jesus, and all that stuff. The whole divine king thing is fascinating. It's a whole different topic, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about it if you want, if you have a point of discussion there, but
no, I mean, it was just a way to keep power and to keep people subjugated, and there's really no one on Earth currently, I don't think, claims to have the divine right to rule.
I don't know. I mean, I know there are still countries with kingdoms, but do you think they don't claim like any divine power or any like special like right to rule?
No, what I'm saying is like I consider like there's a right of hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like when I die, you inherit my property.
Mm-hmm.
That type of of a hereditarial royal king right. I'm talking about the divine right that they are somehow descendants or empowered by
Gotcha.
God with some sort of divine right to rule over everybody, whether or not anything else existed, and maybe have some sort of supernatural power.
I guess not currently, yeah. But I mean, technically, those families, like generations before, had claimed those same things. So I guess by proxy, even though like the individuals themselves aren't claiming that, the reason that they are in power now is because their ancestors had claimed that. Right. So, but yeah,
I'm just kind of I just think it's kind of wild that there used to be a number.
Well, that was most kings at the time. Well, the reason that I can rule is because I have the right to rule. Or because I have the given right to rule.
That I am part God.
Yes.
You know, that is different than I have the right to because I am the descendant of the king.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Because it's a legal argument that, you know, we all inherit what our fathers had, or you know, usually fathers, but my family had before me. That's different than say that I'm part God.
Yes, that is true. Right. That is true. The next story is about how Tyr lost his hand. Tyr was the son of Odin and Frigga, becoming the god of martial honor and one of the 12 supreme deities of Asgard. He was known for having one hand. He is also, I think I said this a couple episodes ago, the origin of the name of the day Tuesday. It's Tyrsdag.
Yeah.
Yes. Very interesting fact there. When Loki had married the giantess Angerboda, he had 3 terrible children, the wolf Fenris, Hel, and the world serpent Jormungandr. And it was not long before Odin discovered them, casting Jormungandr into the sea to encircle the earth, and Hel to Filheim, where she ruled the dead. However, Odin believed that Fenris could be trained in Asgard, and so for several months the terrible wolf grew, with only Tyr being brave enough to feed the wolf. Fenris soon grew too large, and the Council of Asgard met to discuss his fate. Because they agreed that no blood would be shed in Asgard, it was decided that Fenris be bound on chains. The gods tried to chain him twice, but each time Fenris simply laughed, easily releasing himself. Loki then went to the Dark Elves, who forged Gleipnir, a silken rope formed from the sound of a cat's footsteps, a woman's beard, the spittle of birds, and the longing of a bear. Suspicious of this cord, Fenris said that he would only allow himself to be bound if one of the gods placed their hand in his mouth. The gods began to draw back, admitting defeat. However, Tyr strode forward proudly, placing his hand in the wolf's mouth. As he was bound, Fenris realized that he could not free himself, then biting and swallowing Tyr's hand. Tyr took this with dignity, learning to use his maimed arm as a shield and wielding a sword with his left hand, and Fenris was taken to the boulder Thyrti, which was sunk deep into the ground. And Tyr forged a great sword, placing it in Fenris's mouth, and his efforts to dislodge it drew blood, becoming the river Von. Fenris remained there until the last day, and then he would burst forth to prowl the earth forever. So that's part of Ragnarok that we'll see. I believe next episode is when we get into the fall of the gods.
Yes.
But yeah, this is kind of one of the first parts that sets up that whole disaster there. There's other things that happen with Jormungandr and Hel. Those 3 children of Loki are definitely big players in kind of the end of the world we'll see. Yeah, Tyr's an interesting character. He doesn't pop up a lot of the time in Norse myths, but when he does, he's a very noble figure, very courageous. Kind of what you would almost expect Thor to be, with how he's often characterized. But really, like the way we think about Thor are often the qualities that are actually given to Tyr in the Norse mythology.
Right, because he's the god of martial honor, as opposed to just strength in war.
True.
Which shows are kind of sophisticated stories because war is just out of control.
And Thor's not necessarily a symbol of war. He's a symbol of like more so just raw strength and power. Yeah. And he really kind of what we can like presume from the myths is he probably started as more of a farming god. With his thunder, I think we mentioned that a couple times, the thunder causes the rain and everything, and that sort of thing. So it's really, he became like a symbol of power, not necessarily by his very nature, but just because of the fact that thunder is big and loud, and it was really more tied to the earth and to vegetation and that sort of thing, more so than actual like martial power. Yeah. But yeah, interesting character, especially being one-handed. You don't see a lot of like maimed gods. And that's another thing in Norse mythology. I mean, we talked about Odin
having the
one eye, in his quest for knowledge, plucking it out to get knowledge from Mimir's well, and then Tyr here only having one hand. Yeah, very, very interesting. Also, exactly what happens in part of the Silmarillion, kind of. Tolkien's, mythological work.
Tolkien stole from these
Tolkien did it. He was inspired.
Big time, especially the next one.
Yes, but in the story of Beren and Luthien, I think I've mentioned this before, Beren is on this quest to retrieve the Silmaril, one of these gems. And in the end, he does, spoiler alert for the story of Beren and Luthien, but he does receive the gem and he returns back to this elven kingdom. But in retrieving this, Morgoth, the big bad that he stole it from, releases his wolf Karkaroth, and it's causing havoc and stuff. And the Silmaril in Beren's hand is swallowed whole, like by the wolf. The wolf bites off his entire hand, and then the wolf dies because like the light of the Silmaril is too good, and he like burns from the inside, which is kind of gruesome. But pretty much exactly what happens here with the biting off of the hand by this giant wolf. Yeah. Yes, good stories in both the Norse myths and in Tolkien's mythology.
Correct.
The next story is the passing of the dwarfs.
Which is just like the elves going in the
Yes,
ship
I was going to say the same thing. Yes.
Where's the land they go to?
Valinor. The Undying Lands in the west, yes. When the earth was formed, the dwarves were bred from the corpse of Ymir, and they were so ugly that they were told to never show their faces above ground. And they were so dark that they were nearly invisible in the night, and they were never seen in daylight in fear of turning to stone. The dwarves were good friends to the gods, forging them great tools and weapons, but when the old gods stopped being worshipped, the dwarves decided that they could no longer help humans, which they often did by kneading bread, farming, or rocking babies. My notes have skipped a page here. It's unfortunate. One night, the dwarves hired a ferryman, and his whole night was kept busy by transporting his invisible passengers. He was rewarded with riches beyond his imagination. The next morning, it was found that all the dwarfs had passed on to other lands, and no man was ever capable of running a house as he was, with the help and camaraderie of the dwarves. Yeah. So it's an interesting story. They kind of take on the role of, I guess, like more Celtic fairies here, right. Sort of like the household sprites almost, and how they relate to humanity. I'd never heard this story before, actually. I don't think it's in any of the Norse mythologies that I've read. But interesting figures, because I've only known them as sort of how they helped the gods, which is like their big characteristic in a lot of these stories is that, like we were saying,
different stuff and creating different
like we said last episode. I was about to say earlier in this episode, but that was last episode. How their role is mainly just to help the gods and that sort of thing, but also apparently they helped humanity and in these sort of household chores.
Where they went
away.
Yeah, so I guess in a different realm.
I guess so. Yeah, so they probably... Well, it's interesting because the dwarves lived in Svartalfheim because they were also known as the Dark Elves. So it's like they were already in a different realm. But I guess the realms are treated loosely in Norse mythology. Sometimes they're kind of treated as different, like, planes of existence, almost like different planets, sort of. Yeah. Sometimes they're treated as, like, just different kingdoms. Like, over there is Svartalfheim, like, just beyond those mountains. But it's really sort of a fluid thing in which, where are these actual,
that really
areas.
Confuses me.
Yes.
The tree and all that stuff, and where things are relative to each other.
Yes. Well, I think like the tree, if I'm remembering correctly, is like a representation of the Milky Way. Like you look up and you see that big streak in the sky. Well, that must be the branches of the tree. I think, as far as I can tell. But yeah. Interesting stuff, the realms. But yeah, the dwarves are very fascinating figures because sometimes they're really devious and evil. Yeah. We saw that a little bit in kind of the story of Sigurd and how, the dwarves there were not so kind to the gods and that sort of thing. Right. Which is also similar to the Silmarillion in the figure...
Nobody cares about the Silmarillion.
In the figure of Mim the Petty Dwarf, who lived in this hill and forged these things, but was also kind of a jerk to Turin. I think it was Turin, or maybe it was Hurin. One of the figures there. But interesting figures in these stories, yes.
No, yeah, it's kind of... They basically lost their purpose, so they went somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The last story in this section is that of Oberon and Titiana. The fairy king Oberon and Queen Titiana were exquisitely beautiful, and mortals will be drawn into the fairy world just by looking into Oberon's eyes. There was always a sense of unease on Midsummer's Eve, for that is when the fairies dance around Oberon and Titiana, and their music is irresistible, and once someone begins to dance to the music, they will be forced to dance until they die of exhaustion. With the passing of the dwarves, the little folk were no longer considered a blessed addition to the household. It was believed that Oberon harnessed the powers of Frey when he fell, using them to set up the kingdom of fairies, which was as commanding as Asgard had been. However, with Oberon's strength and beauty, he was considered by man to be no more than a demon. So it is, kind of continuing on with the story of the dwarves, just how you kind of envision these little people, essentially these little mythological figures, very much turning kind of in the eyes of humanity into these helpful beings, into these really devious creatures.
Right.
Almost more how they're seen in like Celtic mythologies, as like, kidnapping children and replacing children. Have you heard those stories of like the Celtic fairies?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, like what they would often be thought to do is that they would steal children in the night, never return them, but they would be replaced by like an almost child, like something that was very, very similar to what you put there before, but it was like fundamentally different and was evil, essentially. Which kind of like historians think now that was an explanation of like children with mental disorders. Like, well, this isn't, a real human child. This must be some fairy child that they've given to me, which is kind of dehumanizing, but
yeah, or it could be a justification for infanticide.
That is true, which is never a good thing.
The fairy took my kid. I just had to kill this evil one.
Yeah, yikes!
They wouldn't shut up. They cried all the time.
Oh no!
Well, there's a certain number of people that the shaking baby stuff. I mean that's had been around.
Yeah.
For all of eternity, all of humankind, I would think. You get stressed out, shake the baby, and they die. That light note.
Yeah, that was really awful. Thank you for that.
If you you have to have some sort of justification for it.
I guess that's true.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's a pretty weird story to come up with. That fairies, you come in and switch out your kid with some like clone that's like an evil kid. Yeah, it's really horrible.
Yes, it's not a fun time.
It's almost like the mother's mentally ill or the father's mentally ill for saying that.
Yeah, true. But I mean, there's lots of awful things told in mythologies. But
true. Yeah.
Yes, but that was. What did you think of that overall section of these brief little stories?
I
You like
those,
this?
The stories, a lot of parallels with the Tolkien stuff that I'm familiar with. That's always fun and interesting, but. They're more just like stories.
Yes, they are.
About, without necessarily explaining something or having a morality tale. It's just, this is kind of an interesting tale.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll only have one more section on Norse mythology, I believe, which is about Ragnarok and the end of the world. And after that, we only have the Scottish section.
Oh, nice.
So we are getting close to the end of season 2. So I think we said this a couple episodes ago, but yeah, we got to think about what book we're going to read next time. So we have a few more episodes, probably about a month and a half, I would say, before we start on a new book. So, of course, I'm sure you have ideas, but you don't have any. Well, then
about it. I've been thinking.
Yeah.
But, I haven't really come up with any specific proposed books.
Yes. Well, the listeners can always tweet at us and let us know their ideas at ULMTD Opinions on Twitter. So if you have any ideas for books that you think would be interesting for us to follow along with, can be philosophy related, can be mythology related, can be anything really. Sort of more humanities focused, I guess, is kind of what we're going for here.
Not sports.
Not sports. Not sports.
Professional sports.
I really don't think anyone who listens to this podcast would suggest a sports book. I'm going to be honest with you.
True.
Yes.
All 3 of them.
We have more listeners for that.
That's true.
We do. But yeah, thank you for listening, of course. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the listeners.
Well, if I didn't listen to you, I don't know how to comment.
But yes, this has been Season 2, Episode 31 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop.
We do have to think of a book to read, don't we?
Yes.
You have no ideas?
What is that one? The one book that's dedicated to Lucifer.
What? Wait.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is. Let me look that up.
Rules for Radicals.
Oh.
I thought that would be kind of interesting.
Is it Rules for Radicals? Yeah, did Saul Alinsky?
Yeah, Saul Alinsky rules for.
Huh. What's that book about?
Politics and political activism.
I'm guessing it is a book that you would not like?
Well, it depends because the conservatives are really starting to embrace it. It's more of a tactical thing.
Interesting. Gotcha.
But I don't know. It's almost too specific.
Okay. Then we'll figure something out, I'm sure.